Hello, everyone, and welcome to Advocacy in Action, Hope for a Healthy Future. I'm Annette Logan-Parker, the host for today, and I am so excited in honor of Childhood Cancer Awareness Month to have a very special guest with me today, Kimberly Kindig, who's the Chief Executive Officer of Candlelighters. Kimberly, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. This is so exciting to be able to be talking about childhood cancer awareness with you, Annette.
Well, I love that you're here. We have a long history together. And why don't we start the conversation with telling me a little bit about the mission of Candlelighters and a little bit of history of the organization.
Absolutely. So Candlelighters was started in 1978 by two families, both with a child with cancer at the time. And, rewind to our community 40 plus years ago, there were very limited resources available to families navigating childhood cancer. And so they really envisioned creating a network of support for families like them and those who would come after them. So fast forward 4 decades and Candlelighters still exists with a professional staff and a robust core of volunteers to really wrap our arms around families in the community who are navigating through childhood cancer. Our mission is to provide emotional support, financial assistance, and quality of life services so that these families can really focus on their primary priority, which is their child's well-being and health.
Wonderful. So tell me a little bit about some of the struggles that Candlelighters families face.
I think when a family hears the word your child has cancer, it really creates this whole world of uncertainty and fear. And I don't know if most people know that childhood cancer, the average treatment is 2 to 3 years. So it's doctor's visits, it's all of the now additional struggles that come with having a child with a critical illness. And I think the first primary role for families is understanding what their new normal is. So 72% of our families are low to moderate income to start with, and when they're faced with a childhood cancer diagnosis, now there's additional costs and expenses that they weren't equipped to deal with. So we know that if both family members, parents are working, almost always one parent has to quit their job or take a reduction in hours, which impacts their income and their ability. So one of our primary efforts and one of the most immediate needs is helping these families financially, right? With mortgage, rent assistance, utilities, food insecurity, and research indicates that families who are able to meet these basic needs have a better likelihood of health outcomes, right? So it's the financial piece keeping these families whole while they try to adjust, and then it comes really the emotional trauma, and I think when you have a sick child, I think it's easier to cue into the challenges that the child might be facing. But I do think that the parents, don't think about the trauma that they're dealing with, right? Until they finally get to some stability. And what we find more times than not, it's also the siblings who, they silently suffer through this. And, our goal is really to be able to let them know that these services are available when they need it and be able to provide these services to the entire family. And then I think the last part is what we hear, all the time from not only the children but the parents is that it's really lonely. It's really lonely, it's really isolating. It's hard for folks to understand what they're going through. And for us, one of the things that we can provide them is connection to other families and other children going through this, as well as, I have staff members who've been with the organization for almost 20 years to be able to just simply say, we've done this thousands of times, so you can lean on us, and ask us whatever questions or let us know what you need, and we're going to help you navigate that.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Kim. In honor of Childhood Cancer Awareness Month, I really am excited to have you here. You know, this podcast is designed to dig deep into the intersection of healthcare and advocacy. I really want to showcase organizations and what they're doing to improve positive outcomes for our community. And obviously, Candlelighters has been doing that for over 4 decades. So that's wonderful. You know, I have a long history with Candlelighters, as you know, having sat on the board, and some of those employees that you mentioned, I remember hiring way back in the day. So, you know, I share that because, you know, the collaboration between Candlelighters and Cure for the Kids Foundation has been such a vital part of both of our successes. And so I really want to take a minute to chat about the importance of collaboration, and give you guys a big shout out, really, because we at Cure for the Kids Foundation love working with Candlelighters. Your team is, like you said, professional, they're available, they're compassionate, and it makes our jobs easier to know that while we're focusing on the actual delivery of medical care and other aspects of the childhood cancer journey, that we can refer our families over to Candlelighters, and you really complement what we do really well. So all of that being said, can you share with me a little bit about your thoughts on the collaboration with Cure for the Kids, and maybe showcase some other organizations that you collaborate with?
Yeah, I mean, we obviously love Cure for the Kids too. I mean, we have sort of that shared overlap, right? Mm-hmm. And I think when I talk to folks in the community, and I'm sure this comes, you know, with you too, they're surprised to hear that there's only one pediatric oncology clinic in the community, right, mm-hmm. doing this work. And I think, like, the benefit, like, of having such a strong partnership ensures that we're able to provide for these families in a more holistic way mm-hmm. than most people in our community are receiving that care, mm-hmm. right? And when I think about, you know, how well our teams work together, you know, it actually brings a lot of pride to me. And I really think that the reason for this is, and I feel it when we come in the clinic and we hear it from our families, is that, you know, every medical provider that you have, every medical professional, like, whether we know it or not, I believe we have very similar core values, and it's truly about, like, this idea of family first, at least for us, and knowing, and I've seen time and time again, right, how, like, our teams get really creative to address a challenge, and mm-hmm. to not just limit ourselves by saying, well, what would be the, like, what can we do based on the parameters that we have? It's about, you know, I know that Candlelighters is a little bit more flexible in terms of some of the things that we can do, right? And to be able to really brainstorm, but at the end of the day, know that it's truly, like, about making sure that these children get what they need and what these families do. Mm-hmm. So, you know, I think, and I'm just going to go right out and say it, I mean, I really think that the collaboration that we have between Cure for the Kids and Candlelighters, like, really should be on a pedestal of what collaboration can truly look like. And I think the foundation is really about, like, having a clear sense of what our responsibility is to those we serve. And so, I mean, I can't say enough about, you know, you and your team and what that has meant for Candlelighters.
Well, thank you. We greatly appreciate that, because, you know, collaboration is key. We couldn't do what we do without our partners and our collaborators. And I agree with you that that's not always something that we see in our community. And so I love that we can set the example of what 2 like-minded organizations can do. It's like, you know, 1 + 1 = 5, right? Because together we really complement one another. And I love that I know I can always call Candlelighters and say, I have this unique problem and we really want to figure out how to address it. What are your thoughts? What resources do you have that might be available to our families? And so that's, we greatly appreciate you and your team as well.
Well, and I think of, you know, I mean, more specifically, some of the ways that we come together, you know, with specifically our annual camp. We have any number of your medical providers, Cup of Joe, and, you know, any number of your oncology nurses who come. And I think even just talking about more specifically on what that means, like having medical providers who get to see these kiddos outside of the clinical setting. You know, I know that we had a young lady this past summer who, you know, she wanted to try everything. And I think the reinforcement for that too is like when it comes to her treatment, to be able to say, hey, we might be able to push her a little bit more in her physical therapy. Like there's more there. And so I think also being able to have that dynamic where our teams can see these families in different environments and be able to share that is really, really special. And then, you asked about just other collaborations we have in the community. And I think, for us, we know that we can't meet all of the needs of our families. Like we have limited time and resources. I hope one day we'll be able to, but until we do, we look locally and nationally for agencies who can complement those services, because at the end of the day, our whole focus is how do we keep these families whole as they navigate, this critical illness.
Well, one of the things that has always impressed me about Candlelighters is your ability to keep your eye on that particular ball. You're the longest standing childhood cancer organization in the state of Nevada. So kudos for you guys for maintaining that. And you've never taken your eye off the ball. So I think that that's really something to showcase and compliment.
Thank you.
So Kim, you mentioned camp, which camp is one of obviously my favorite things in the whole wide world. I'd love for you to share with us what you feel the kids and the families get out of camp. I mean, I know from having attended camp, having my team attend camp, I mean, it's one of the favorite things that our clinical team looks forward to. I mean, Dr. Joe Lasky, Cup of Joe, he just loves going to camp, and I love to see him return from camp because he personally has gotten so much out of it. So I know the benefit for all of us as healthcare providers and the volunteers, but talk to us a little bit about what does camp mean for the camp participants, their siblings, and their families?
So I think this annual camp, which, we talked about the medical providers who come. It's a medically supervised 5-day, 4-night camp. So, we can take children who are stable, who are in treatment. We can take their siblings. We can also take siblings of, kiddos who've unfortunately have lost their battle. And it's really just a break from cancer and for them to feel normal and, to know that there's good things to come, and also to surround them with a community of, volunteers who will love on them and make them feel extremely special. And again, going back to that whole isolation that these kiddos feel, that they're in this community, that they don't have to explain why they don't have hair. They don't have to explain, why they're sad. And I think there's such a magic in that. We talk about camp as, that magic. And, in addition to, we brought roughly 100 children to camp this year. In order to do that, we also bring about 80 volunteers to help support them. And I think, from some of the siblings we hear, it's about, I get to, for 1 week, just put all of my responsibilities and my worries aside. And from the children who are going through cancer, who, their current situation may limit them from coming to the clinic and being at home, and now they're able to be outside and, like we talked about that young lady, to try things. I mean, to truly just try a ropes course. And, I think they come back, they have so much more confidence. They have other kids that they've made lifelong friendships with. And I think that gives them hope. And so I know even, what we've heard from, your team too, is for those who've been to camp, to be able to say, hey, we need to get you in a place where you're strong enough to be able to go to camp. And that really, truly is a motivator for them.
Yeah, that's great. I love to hear that. So I'm going to change from a happy topic of camp to one that might be a little bit more challenging, which is grief management and compassion fatigue for the professionals who work at Candlelighters. Can you talk to me a little bit about what that experience is like for you and for your team members, and maybe some of the things that you do to address that?
Sure. That is truly, forefront. And I think some of the things that we as an organization don't talk about as much is that, we provide support for the family through the entire journey, and sometimes that means loss. And it's really hard to watch a family navigate loss. And loss comes in many shapes, like obviously the loss of life, but also just a different future than what they imagined, right? We get to know these families, we get to love them, and it's really hard to watch, some of the defeats that come, with a journey that's dynamic. So I think with that said, I've never worked in a space where there is so much gratitude. And, I hear all the time from people in the community, gosh, what you do must be hard, what your team does must be hard. And that is true. But I think that's counterbalanced by how much gratitude there is. So even when we talk about our angel families and the bereavement support that we offer, one of the most important things that Candlelighters does for these families is our promise to always remember their child. And that can mean everything to, not only the parents, but the siblings. And it doesn't cost us anything to do that, right? So, now sort of shifting gears to how do we as a team, ensure with compassion fatigue and what have you. So, one, we make sure that our health benefits are, as top notch as I can provide, ensuring that we have, employee assistance programs and there's a direct connection to mental health professional services, right? Because we understand the importance of emotional support for our families. For me as an employer, I want to make sure that my team feels like they have the support that they need with that. So, I think that's one of the more macro things we do. We certainly talk about it on a micro level, and we've dedicated staff development to that as well. I think the benefit of still having a fairly small team is, again, we're such a high touch organization to be able to really check in. And I have to tell you, I've never cried as much as working at Candlelighters, but sometimes you just need a good cry. And it can be painful, and it's okay to say, hey, this is painful, but we're going to focus on, knowing that we're providing a service and support that contributes so much to the people who need it.
Absolutely. Well, the benefit of compassion, I was just recently talking to someone else in our community about, compassion isn't a one-way street, right? It's a 2-lane highway. And what caregivers, I consider your team caregivers, just an extension of my clinical team, right? The benefit of giving compassion, there's been studies that show that you get a dopamine hit and all of those different things. And so it's great that you are creating an environment where your team is allowed to feel and provide compassion, and that you're giving compassion to them as well. Because it's a tough industry, and we hear that all the time too, wow, your job is really, really hard. And we agree that at times it is hard, but it is so immensely rewarding that we get so much in return for what we do and the services that we provide. So kudos to you again for making sure that your team has what they need. It's a really important part. People always hear me say, put your own oxygen mask on first, just
right.
Like on the airplane, right? If we're not taking care of ourselves, how can we take care of these families who so desperately need us to be there on that journey with them?
And I think with that, so one of our core values is infinitely compassionate. And, I think when we look to recruit and add team members letting folks know, hey, this isn't for everyone, right? And that's okay. So I think we try to set the stage early. I think one of the other ways in which we try to reinforce our team too, to help share, some of the load, is we do have a really fantastic group of volunteers, many who have a direct connection to childhood cancer. And so to be able to lean on them to help with leading programming and what have you too, even when we can't always add paid staff, we're able to supplement our team with other individuals who can also lend their compassion and their support to provide to these families.
Wonderful. And I understand you have some exciting news, potentially with a new location. Can you update us on that?
Absolutely. So we recently purchased a building. It's our first building in our history. So we're currently in about 4,000 square feet. We'll be moving in, when we move into the building, we'll be expanding our programming capabilities to 8,600 square feet.
Wow, that's double inside of that. Congratulations.
Yes, thank you. So we purchased it in June. We're hoping to move in the first of the year. And what this building's ultimately going to be able to help us do is really be able to provide family-centered care at the same time. So obviously we're doing it, but with limited space constraints. It's, where our teen group meets in the community, or we're finding places to do programming where we can. Now we'll actually have a space that is specifically designed for our families and to be able to provide care to the parents, the siblings, and the diagnosed child all at the same time. And we believe that that will help increase health outcomes for the entire family unit.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Is monumental for a tax-exempt organization, and I know that that has been a long-time dream of the Candlelighters Board of Trustees, so they must all be very, very proud. And I mean, that's a clear indication of your solid leadership.
Thank you.
How long have you been with Candlelighters now?
So I've been with Candlelighters for 5 years.
Wow, time flies,
I know.
doesn't it? That's great, 5 years, yeah. So talk to me a little bit about the changes that you've seen over the last 5 years and some of the cool things, in addition to securing your own building, what you guys have accomplished.
Yeah, so, it's been a wild 5 years. I think when we first started, it's like, gosh, it feels like it's like been only minutes since we last saw each other, and it's been months. And so the time has certainly been, it's felt slow at times and very fast at others. And so I think over the last 5 years, our organization has actually doubled in size, not only from a financial stability, but also from our staff, which just means that we're able to provide more services to families. So we've really tried to expand every critical service, including financial assistance, emotional support, so play therapy, counseling, as well as expanding into these other areas of connection. So I've mentioned really focusing on teens as well as siblings to do that. And the culmination of the building is really exciting because that just gives us a real space for us to be able to continue to expand that. We recently just launched a young adult advisory council, which will play an instrumental role in helping us not only build a programming that is really created for and by young people, but also activate a space that will be specifically designed for this age group.
Oh yeah, the adolescent and young adult AYA patient population. I'm so glad to hear that you're putting a specific focus there. It's such a need, not only in our community but worldwide. Those particular patients. In spite of everybody's efforts, they sometimes fall through the cracks. There are fewer services available to them, and their needs are so different than what we would consider the pediatric or the childhood cancer patient. So that's really exciting to hear.
Yeah, I mean, it's, so when we launched this group, we really specifically tasked them with, teens and young adults. And when they got brainstorming, they came up with programming for younger children as well as their parents. And so it's such a unique age group, because I do feel we've all been teens. We feel misunderstood. Maybe there's not as many platforms for us to communicate, but they're so their experience is so vast, and they have such a rich understanding of what they truly believe is needed. And so I can't be more excited for this group. And I think, as we think about like the Nevada Cancer Plan coming up, I know there's going to be a focus on pediatric oncology specifically. For me, it's about how do we incorporate these young people's voices, in that plan as well, because I do think that they're not as represented as they could be.
Yeah. Oh, speaking of the Nevada Cancer Plan, I mean, I'm very excited. It's been many, many years. I've sat on that steering committee before, and to see them really embracing the concept of including childhood cancer and AYA cancer in the statewide cancer plan is quite an accomplishment for the state. We should all be very, very proud of that. And, Kara Harrington and our colleagues up who run the Nevada Cancer Coalition have been champions for us all along. So that's exciting. And that's another example of an amazing statewide collaboration. And, one of the things that I really want this podcast to showcase is all the different opportunities that we have to share ideas and brainstorm, because we're stronger in numbers.
Absolutely.
And that's not always something that we see in the nonprofit arena. There's a lot of competition, and we're all competing for the same donation dollar. But I think that there's opportunities to collaborate to make those donation dollars go even further for all organizations involved. So it's exciting that that's happening. So talk to me a little bit about some of the obstacles that Candlelighters faces and maybe how the community can support you.
I think I've heard myself say, a number of times during this, we're still a small organization, right? Like we're growing and we're expanding, but we're still small, and the vast majority of our funding in the community comes from the generosity of individuals or businesses. So our ability to grow and meet the needs of these families is really reliant on the philanthropic efforts that we have. And so I think, for me, I know that we may not have the same, name recognition or awareness as other nonprofits, but if this is an area that individuals really care about, children and families and cancer support, that they look us up on our website, at candlelightersnv.org, or they come by and visit and see what we do, because we would love that. And I think beyond just being able to provide these services to families, we're also just trying to create a community to let these families know, look, this is a community that really cares about you and is here for you as you navigate potentially some of the darkest times, of your life.
Absolutely. I would imagine you're going to have a big grand opening celebration, and you'll be inviting members of the public to that. So we'll be sure and get that information out to our viewers as well. Really excited to learn about and hear about what Candlelighters has been doing. So, in honor of Childhood Cancer Awareness Month, is there anything specific that you want to share with our viewers? And then I'm going to have a follow-up question about what advice do you have for parents who are on the journey?
Okay. So I think first question, so we have a fantastic superhero 5K on September 26th, which is raising awareness for childhood cancer and also raising funds to support local families. And so, to those who are listening or watching, if you want to come out, do something good for yourself, you get those steps in, do something good for the community. It's such a inspiring, family-friendly event to come out and to show your support. That's one way to get involved. And as you said, we're ramping up for a new building. We have any number of volunteer opportunities. So going to our website to see how folks can, volunteer or maybe purchase something on a wish list, that's always an option. And then I think with your question about advice for parents who are on the journey, I think for me it's, just know that there are all of these people who care about you and who are literally just a call or a text away from being able to provide you support. And I feel that to be the case for Cure for the Kids as well as Candlelighters. I think it can be easy to feel discouraged and overwhelmed. And I think for me, it's, just know we're here for you. So wherever you're at, whatever you need, we're here for you.
Well, that is wonderful advice for families. Thank you for sharing that. I do agree. Sometimes it can be scary to make that first call or that first contact, but it's worth it to do it. And then I have to put a plug in for your 5K. It is one of the best 5Ks, I think. It is so fun, and it's very inspiring. So many of the kids are out there. It's a great time, and that is a great way to help us celebrate Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. So be on the lookout for information about that. Thank you so much for joining us today, Kim. It's always a pleasure to chat with you. And for our viewers, thank you for helping us celebrate Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. And until next time, Advocacy in Action wishes you well. Thank you.